What
Hey,
the hell is
how's
that?
it going? How's it going? Is there anything going on tomorrow? I don't know. By the way, we have extra Kit Kats if you want. I mean, if you want, just ask me. Stupidly brought 2 bags. Happy Halloween tomorrow, guys. My name is Stephen
Happy Halloween.
Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan. Happy Halloween, Rabbi.
I mean, after straight, if you want to go crazy hats, I might as well break out Harley Quinn for a change. So,
Okay.
what's going
I'm
on?
gonna take this. I'm gonna take this off just because of the fact that this was supposed to originally be an eye patch. So, but that didn't really work out as well. I couldn't find it in time. Anyway, welcome to On the Sports Lines. Happy Halloween Eve edition. It's a little bit of everything. We'll call it the World Series edition, but whatever. So we've got a lighter show for you this week. We'll talk about the Jets, the Giants. We'll throw up a little bit, and then we'll also talk about college football, but not necessarily all of that in that order, but we'll talk about that this morning. So we'll start with that thing that's going on right now called the World Series between the Evil Empire, the team that seemingly cheats all the time, but has found themselves in a third World Series in 5 years, the Houston Astros, against the Atlanta Braves, holders of the worst record of the 10 teams who made the playoffs, wildcard teams included. And naturally, they made the World Series for the first time in 22 years. And yes, they don't get the All-Star game, but they get to host 3 games of the World Series. Go figure. The Braves won game 1 on the legs. I mean, whatever is left of the legs of pitcher Charlie Morton. The Astros slugged their way to a game 2 victory. And then in game 3, the Braves demolished the Astros with their pitching, not giving up a hit until the 8th inning. I would say it was Don Larson-like, but they took out Ian Anderson after 5 innings, so let's not even put it in the same sentence. All right, so we still have at least 2 games left to go in this World Series. I have a feeling it's going to be more. Let's get some keys for at least the next 2 games, and let's start with the AL champions, Houston, Jay.
And I got before we exit out of this segment, Rabbi, I got a little trivia for y'all, a little Jason Stark Weird and Wild, since his column just went live moments before we came on the air. The player I'm watching for the Houston Astros is Jose Altuve. It may be slightly Captain Obvious, but there's a reason. Yeah, Yordan Alvarez was the ALCS MVP, and yeah, Altuve hasn't lit the postseason on fire just yet, but we all know that as the Astros go, as Altuve goes, he'll look absolutely awful in one at bat, and then he'll crush one off the train tracks, in Minute Maid Park. And that's typical of a lot of veteran hitters who have been on this type of stage before, as Altuve has. They don't let one at bat bleed into the next one, which is why you have to believe that he'll get untracked at some point. He's hit a ridiculous, it's 22 homers now in 6 postseason games. And that's across 330 odd plate appearances over 6 years and 15 series. I mean, in last year's playoffs, this is a guy who had a slash line of 287, 437, 562, an OPS of 998, 5 homers and 11 RBI. And way back in 2017, when he first burst on the postseason stage, 349, 422, 715 slash line. That's a 1.136 OPS, 7 homers and 14 RBI. It's a little concerning that he's coming off a league championship series where he was 3 for 24, but 2 of those hits were game-tying home runs. He's been inconsistent so far in this series, 0 for 5 with 3 Ks in the game 1 loss. 2 for 5 with a home run in the game 2 win, 0 for 3 with a pair of Ks in the game 3 loss. The Astros' entire offense has been unable to really get on track so far in this series. Altuve adjusted his approach in the batter's box after game 1. He allowed the ball to travel a little deeper and focus on going up the middle more than pulling every pitch. And that was after talking to Astros advisor Reggie Jackson, a guy who knows a little bit about playing baseball in October, along with conversations with hitting coaches Alex Cintron, Troy Snitker, who is manager Brian Snitker's son, he of the Braves, as well as Altuve's teammate Marwan Gonzalez. This is a big change for a guy who's pulled 34 of the 35 home runs he's hit this season, including the playoffs. Paid dividends in game 2, not so much game 3. We'll see what game 4 brings. Look, the only Astro hitter doing any type of damage so far has been Michael Brantley, who has a 385, 538 slash line. Alex Bregman, 111, 250, 111. Carlos Correa, 100, 250, 100. And ALCS MVP Yordan Alvarez, 125, 417, 375. None of them have really gotten untracked. And with the loss of Charlie Morton upending Dusty Baker's pitching plans for this series, the offense is going to have to win it for Houston, and it starts with Altuve. A 154 214, 462 slash line isn't going to cut it because it's at the top. As he goes, so go the Astros.
Yeah, I'm very it's so weird to see how this Astros team was day and night in that Boston series. Like they couldn't buy a hit in games 2 and 3, and then all of a sudden the light switch flicked off in game 4. And if you watched that series, you thought there was no possible way they could come back from that 2-1 deficit.
Right.
They did, and they're where they are right now. I know me and Anthony were talking, and they said, "Oh, Morton's injury is really bad." I'm like, is it though? Because I don't know who this Houston Astros team. I don't know who this Houston Astros team has been this postseason, and I still don't know now. I kind of know who Atlanta is, and then of course everything will change. But speaking of Atlanta, Anthony, let's talk about the NL champions and what they need to do to at least get one of these next 2 at home and have a chance to win it when going back to Houston, or can they avoid Houston altogether?
Question is, do we know the Atlanta Braves? Because we thought we knew them back in August and September.
We know them now. We know them now. They're only the 3rd team to actually make the World Series after having a losing record after the All-Star break. So I think we know them, but who the hell knows?
Yeah, by the way, I read that Jason Stark article you sent me, Jay. This is actually the team, the first team to get into the World Series. The latest to get over 500. I mean, they brought up the Mets at 73, but they actually started 4-0. So the Braves are technically the first team to get to World Series without getting to 500 until August or later. But that's besides the point. Eddie Rosario is the guy I'm focused on. And obviously, the LCS MVP in the National League side, he's like Jose Altuve is for the Houston Astros. He's the guy leading off. He's the trendsetter. He's the guy who pretty much sets everything up for the rest of the Atlanta Braves lineup. Look at what he did in the league championship series. He was batting .571 going into Game 6 last Saturday night, and he managed to foul off a couple of tough pitches from Walker Buehler in that at bat, and fell behind the count 0-2, 1-2 count, bang one over the right field wall. It pretty much turned the tide of Game 6 because it was kind of a pitcher's duel up to that point. Braves were able to hold on and plus win the World Series. Like he finished the league championship series batting .560 for the series, 14 hits, tied for the most in a 7-game series. Of course, he only needed 6 games to do it. He got the other guys, Marco Scudero, Kevin Youkilis, and Hideki Matsui, along with Albert Pujols, took them full 7 games to do it. Look into what he's been doing in the World Series so far. He's got a couple of hits in Game 1, scored 2 runs. Game 2 was really the only game that he was over 4. They kept him off the base. A good job of that. Game 3, got on base and really kind of got the ball going for the Braves and getting that run. Austin Riley, the 2-run double to knock him in. That gave the Atlanta the first run in the game. Rosario's been phenomenal in this postseason. He's been kind of a microcosm of the Atlanta Braves as a whole. You think about all the guys they traded for, combined 6 for 18 and 4 of the 6 runs in Game 1 of the series. I mean, if there's any team that can honestly say that can honestly brag about winning the trade deadline, it was the Atlanta Braves, because literally everybody they traded for has contributed in a big way. Jorge Soler with a bomb to start Game 1, the very first pitch of all things. But then you look at, like I said, Rosario was kind of a throw-in trade for depth. He was batting under 300, finished the season with 14 home runs, and he just been on the Braves as a whole, a magical postseason run. But the story of the Braves so far has been the pitching, without question. I mean, you mentioned Ian Anderson being taken out of the game for with a no-hitter through 5 innings. When you think about it like this, losing Charlie Morton may actually hurt the Braves in the long run. I mean, if there was an advantage that the Braves had going into the series, was their pitching, because they had a little bit more than the Astros, whose starting rotation is banged up with no colors. They lost Verlander ages ago, and Zach Greinke's being kind of up and down at best. So that was the one advantage that they have, but their bullpen has just been lights out from literally even before getting to Will Smith. They've been stellar, and right now it has become a battle between the Braves bullpen And the Astros offense, so right now, the first 3 games stands for 1 bad inning in game 2. Atlanta's pitching and bullpen has been dominant.
I tell you what, Rabbi, and I know you're gonna talk about the pitching in a second. If whether Ian Anderson had been left in the game or not, but if the Braves had actually managed to no-hit the Astros last night, Dusty Baker would have been the only manager to be on the end of the losing end of 2 postseason no-hitters. Because if you guys remember, he was the manager of the Reds when Roy Halladay threw his postseason no-hitter. So there's your setup, my friend. Take the mound.
I feel like that's more of just a humble brag of a thing from you. But I would say this for Dusty Baker. He's been everywhere in baseball history. My goodness.
Yeah.
And the fact that we haven't seen him win a World that he hasn't really seen. He hasn't won a World Series is kind of shocking. But
he's Forrest Gump. He's Forrest Gump, basically. He's part of every historical moment we could think of. Just seeing it.
Yes, he is. He really is, and you don't realize how much this man has seen and how this man is still doing the managing he's doing today. Him and Tony La Russa are defying eras, unfortunately, because they both have such old school mentalities about them. Okay. I want to talk about pitching really quickly. So for the Astros, I want to look at Christian Javier for a second. He was the guy who got a 1 1/3 scoreless innings in the Astros Game 2 victory on Wednesday, this past Wednesday. Did a good job. He also bridged the gap in Game 4 to kind of lead, to kind of hold the Red Sox scoreless, to kind of lead the Astros comeback, which kind of turned that series around. I'm very interested to see. Javier is probably one of the first middle relievers that you'll see coming out of the pen for the Astros, and the Astros starting pitching has been bad, to say the least, this postseason. So if the Astros do at least have a starter to put on the mound, so their job is just to get to the 4th or 5th inning, and that's being very generous, and letting Javier at least bridge the gap to the 6th or the 7th inning. He's done that pretty well this postseason in some high pressure spots. I expect that to happen at least 1 or 2 more times over the next 2, 3, or 4 games. Now, for the Braves, I want to focus on the guy who is replacing Charlie Morton. And for God's sakes, let's give Charlie Morton some credit for a second here. What he did in that first game of the World Series can't be overemphasized enough. Basically pitching on a broken leg for 18 pitches in the 2nd and 3rd inning is quite phenomenal, considering his career could have been easily on the line in any of those pitches. And he basically had to be taken out of that game kicking and screaming. The guy who replaced him is Tucker Davidson. He's a left-hander. He can do a bunch of different things. He made some starts this season in May and June. He did not pitch in any postseason games going into him being on the roster after Game 2. I'm kind of curious to see what the Braves game plan is for Game 4 and 5, because Brian Snitker has basically said, we want to win this game, we'll take Game 4 next. So while the Astros would be starting Zach Greinke tonight, the ghost of Zach Greinke, or whatever's left of Zach Greinke, the Braves are probably going to go straight up bullpen game for the next 2 games. And we've seen a lot of teams have successes with it. But again, as Anthony said, the whole point of this series is the Braves bullpen versus the Astros bats. Sometimes you're going to have to think the Astros bats are going to eventually get the better half of the Braves bullpen, but in pressure situations, let's see if the Braves can hit. I'm a little disappointed in what the Braves have done at least Games 2 and Games 3 outside of former Met Travis d'Arnaud, who apparently is now the guy who could hit a postseason home run in a clutch situation in the World Series. But I think in this situation, if there becomes a slugfest in Game 4 or Game 5, I'm very curious to see which team ends up on top. It should be the Astros, but we've seen the Braves this postseason come up with timely hits in the biggest of situations. But pitching-wise, Atlanta is going to need to stay in the game with these bullpen games in Game 4 and most likely in Game 5.
All right, Rabbi, before we exit, Travis d'Arnaud is the subject of this little snippet for you guys. Jason Stark, the Hall of Fame baseball writer who writes for The Athletic, who does this weird and wild column throughout the baseball season and also in the playoffs. His one for last night's World Series game just came up before we went live, and it's one of those things we put up on Twitter that we think you should pay attention to. So listen to this, guys. Under the heading of baseball is weird. Finally, this is a thing that happened in World Series Game 3 on Friday. 8th inning, Braves catcher Travis d'Arnaud homers against Astros Kendall Graveman. What's so weird about that, you ask? Graveman allowed no home runs to right-handed hitters all season. d'Arnaud hit no home runs in his home park all season. So what's up with that? What else? Baseball.
Yeah, another thing too is that ball landed almost identical to the same exact spot. His home run that dinged the apple in center field against the Cubs in the NLCS back in 2015 landed. I mean, I actually sent the clip to Rabbi last night. I was like, d'Arnaud's the only guy I know who can hit a home run in really adverse weather conditions, because he hit that one through a cold, windy night in Citi Field. And last night, he hits a 400-plus bomb to straightaway center field in rainy, windy conditions in Truist Park. By the way, Atlanta's crowd is phenomenal. They don't want you to vote, but their crowd is very unbelievably loud last night. I mean,
wow.
There's so many conflicting feelings right now watching the Braves. Just from a Met fan standpoint, even if you take politics out of it, it's just like, oh, geez, it's the Braves, by the way. I hate this team for 20 years, and I got to root for them. I got to actually watch them in the World Series again. Yikes.
It's the job,
even
it's the job.
Even as a Yankee fan, it's even weird to say. By the way, that postseason crowd, only there for the postseason. If you've ever seen Atlanta Braves regular season games, just saying. Just saying. Yeah, exactly.
I've been to Braves games before.
Also, can we find a way to make these games less than 4 hours? Jesus Christ. Game 1 and Game 2 looks like it lasted forever. And Game 3 at least lasted a little over 3 hours last night. But then again, it
advertising,
basically, yeah, not just advertising. It's pitching changes. It's just pace of play is terrible. Baseball's got a lot of things to change. And we can always talk about that later. But we have to move on to something even more pathetic. And that is the PATHETICJETS. Welcome to the NFL. Jets fans got a little bit of the Halloween triple threat, I like to call it. Pain in another loss to the Patriots, this time in a nail-biter, 54-13. Sorrow in seeing their franchise QB go down during that game with the PCL sprain that'll have him miss at least 2 to 4 weeks, and I have a feeling it might be more. And terror. This could be Joe Flacco being back in the organization after being traded this week, Mike White starting at QB this week for his first start ever in the NFL, or hosting the white-hot Bengals this week. You pick one of those three. Anyway, with that being said, Jay, you have the impossible assignment to find a positive in this game that needs to, oh, hell with it, Jay. What the hell could be considered good by the Jets game from that Patriots game that needs to go the weekend?
I tell you, trying to find a positive in the wake of a 54-13 beatdown at the hands of the Patriots that cost the Jets Zach Wilson for, I'm thinking, closer to 4 weeks, was like trying to find a needle in a needle stack. The only needle I could find was that the Jets actually converted on third down, going 7 of 13 against the Patriots. I mean, in theory, anytime you convert on third down at a 53.85 clip, your offense should have a good game. So if the Jets can continue that against a high-flying Bengals team, they might be able to keep Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase off the field for enough possessions to make the game competitive. Look, I can't see the Jets winning this game. All transparency, the Bengals are my suicide pick this week. Not with Mike White at quarterback. He did as well as could be expected in relief of Wilson. 20 of 32, that's a 62.5% completion percentage, 202 yards, 1 TD, 2 picks. But the Jets offense never got going, and the Jets defense was flat out carved up by Mac Jones, who put up the first 300-yard passing game of his career. 24 of 36, that's 66.7% passing for 307 yards, 2 scores, no picks, a 111.7 passer rating. The Jets, as Rabbi said, the Jets got veteran quarterback Joe Flacco back in a trade with the Eagles, but the earliest he'd likely step under center is Thursday night against the Colts, and that's overly optimistic in my opinion. So the Jets will ride with White and hope he can be slightly more efficient. Hope his playmakers can make a few more plays, third down or otherwise, and hope the defense doesn't let another offense hang a ridiculously crooked number on them. That's what it comes down to, Jets. The Jets don't have a lot of positives that need to continue this coming into this week. Just a lot of hope.
Hope is a very dangerous thing if you are any Jets fan in any way, shape, or form. I think hope has gone out the door a long time ago. The fact that I saw I love the Patriots, but the fact that I saw trick plays last week coming out of the wazoo of that team, I know they were desperate for a win, but that's assault charges basically going up against doing that against the Jets. That is literally as bad sportsmanship as you possibly can get. And that Jets team is they have so many problems. Anthony, one Negatibe, just one. I want to be home by 6 o'clock.
You know what? It's effort. And I'll put that on the coaching staff without question. You have 2 weeks to basically prepare for an opponent. And this is the effort you put out. I mean, look, I like Robert Saleh. I think he's going to be a great coach. But I get the feeling like with this roster, and it's a rebuilding in progress, obviously, he's set up to fail because there's just no way you could possibly have that much time between games. Remember, they were in London. The last game is Atlanta and had some time and had plenty of time to prepare for this game. And you give up 54 points to a team that has struggled offensively to score points. You give up close to over 550 yards of total offense to a team that really had a hard time outside the big play against Dallas a few weeks ago, moving the football. And you basically get your quarterback almost killed in the process. You know, I don't know what to say. I mean, Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, we talked about him a lot on this show. He needs to get some tips from his brother in Green Bay because right now the offense looks unimaginative. It doesn't like he's doing anything that helps Zach Wilson out when he's on the field. They can't get a running game together whatsoever. The offensive line is has been atrociously bad, particularly on the right side of all things. And the defense didn't have CJ Mosley. They may get him back for the Cincinnati game, but it just showed like even with all the injuries and the missing pieces, effort and being prepared and just giving a damn makes a whole lot of difference. And it felt like a lifetime ago that the Jet team we saw put up a valiant effort in beating Tennessee and playing well against Atlanta and almost come back and winning that game. And it's like what happened to that team that we saw at MetLife Stadium basically slow down Derrick Henry and slow down a Tennessee offense that just literally manhandled Kansas City not too long ago. I don't understand what is going on, but you got to put all this on the coaching. I mean, you have this much time off, and you come out and put out that kind of a flat effort. Like, I made a joke about them being the Bishop Sycamore Jets for a number of reasons, but it's becoming kind of sad because it's like, I like Bishop Sycamore. You're being paid to play football. This is your actual job. We're not faking anything, but this is just, like I said, I mean, the last time I saw a Jet team play this badly with this lack of an effort was several years ago. I went to a Monday Night Football game. They played the Colts, and it was so bad. And I had a Giant fan. Even I said Jet fans deserve better than this, and I was so vocal about that. And it just gave me back flashbacks. Hopefully, they do show up at some point against a Cincinnati team that's been playing putting up video game numbers on offense between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. So, like I said, they were embarrassed enough last week to maybe show up at MetLife for this week's game.
Here's the other piece of hope that Jets fans can take away. Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is what the Jets are trying to, what they've installed and what they're trying to run here. While it is quarterback friendly, it does take certain type of players. It is complicated. It does take a while to learn. And if you guys will remember, in the other LaFleur's first year running this offense with no less a quarterback than Aaron Rodgers, they struggled a little bit getting on the same page and, getting that scheme and understanding how it works and getting, into a groove with that offense. So if a future Hall of Famer struggled at the outset, learning this scheme and figuring it out, it's not surprising that the Jets are struggling with it, but you know what? Let's hope that year 2 on this offense is better than year 1, because right now I agree with Anthony. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and I would even say this too. I think the coaches really need to start to simplify the game plan a little bit. Where your players are struggling this badly to pick things up right along, and not even that, if you can't pick it up in 2 weeks, it's going to be hard to pick it up in 6 days also. So I think they really need to scale back some of that offensive game plan a little bit.
How much more can you scale back that offensive game plan? They don't even have a running back that really has had NFL reps. There's a talent gap right now in the NFL between the haves and the have-nots, and you've seen teams like,
and then there's the Jets.
No, the Jets fall in the same category to me as Miami, Houston, Jacksonville, Washington. I'll even throw Philly in there. There are a lot of teams right there that are just poor. I know you could say the Jets are on that next level. Much. Yeah, there's a lot of horse manure teams in the NFL, and the Jets, unfortunately, are one of them. By the way, in that Packers season where Aaron Rodgers struggled, they still made the NFC Championship game because that's how that organization is. Okay. I know Jay has seen this once this year, and I know I'm going to be called for my LSU bias, but Ja'Marr Chase and what he's been doing right now with the Cincinnati Bengals has been phenomenal. He did not play last year at LSU due to opting out due to the pandemic and, of course, losing draft position. He was considered by many to be one of the elite talents in that draft. And if he played that year, he probably would have even gone higher than the 5th pick that he was in for Cincinnati. But I thought it was a decent pick. Some people thought maybe pick the offensive tackle from Baylor, Penei Sewell. He ended up going to the Lions. Turned out to be the best pick you possibly could imagine, because Joe Burrow has been finding Ja'Marr Chase and finding him often this season. Second most receiving yards in the league, 754 on 35 receptions, 6 touchdown passes, 4 of them for 30-plus yards. Cincinnati got rid of A.J. Green, who is still apparently looking for that Kyler Murray pass on Thursday night. So they got rid of him for a good reason. He is on a pace to shatter the 1,400 receiving yards that Justin Jefferson, also an LSU boy, had with the Minnesota Vikings last season. But what was just impressive last week is that game against Baltimore. Baltimore's defense, Wink Martindale, is known for trying to take your best player out of the game, especially. Mixon is a good player rushing wise. You still have that attack, but you have the wide receivers there. You have Tyler Boyd, but Ja'Marr Chase, just take him out. Everything will be fine. Make Joe Burrow have small passes down the field. 8 catches, 201 yards, and one of these little quick slants that Ja'Marr Chase turned into an 82-yard touchdown. The Bengals offense is kind of deadly right now and is a tough team to play against. They're unpredictable. This is the best Bengals team that we've seen in a long while. They have a quarterback that we saw last year before his injury, and hopefully for the NFL, he doesn't get injured again. Joe Burrow, who knows how to win, who knows how to play the quarterback position, who is ready to play from day one, and just getting him one of his best wide receivers in LSU did the job. There is no better guarantee, and I think you guys can agree right now, than an LSU quarterback and then an LSU wide receiver in the NFL, outside of Odell Beckham Jr. And Ja'Marr Chase has shown that he is one of the most valuable wide receivers, definitely the most valuable rookie wide receiver, but in the NFL, he might be the most valuable wide receiver. He has been that good, although I think this might be a trap game for the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know. They have Cleveland next week. They come off this emotional win off of Baltimore. Jay, your suicide pick, might be you're going to squirm a little bit this week. I just have
you know what? Here's the thing. If the Jets were healthy and if Wilson was there, I might be a little more concerned. But here's the thing that, I mean, the thing that nobody is paying any attention to or talking enough about, in my estimation, is the Bengals defense, which has been as good as they've had in a very long time. They don't get talked about because all the press is about Burrow and Chase, and deservedly so. But the Bengals defense has been doing its job, flying under the radar, just coming out, putting hats on hats, taking people down, getting pressure on the quarterback, keeping teams out of the end zone. And that's why I think, because this team is more than just Burrow to Chase, or more than just Joe Mixon, being a home run threat coming out of the backfield. This is a fully formed team. There's a reason these guys are right now, probably the most complete team in the NFL. In the AFC. We expected more from the Kansas City Chiefs. We expected more. We were hoping for more from the Los Angeles Chargers. But the AFC is a lot more wide open this year than we thought it would be. I mean, the Colts are coming back in. They're making noise. Tennessee's making noise. But right now, guys, if the season ended, the number one seed in the AFC would be Cincinnati. So, I mean, and you talk about Burrow to Chase. And Rabbi, I said this to you on draft night. There is something to a quarterback getting to play with a guy that he has instant chemistry with. Joe Burrow is a confident guy to begin with, but he has no qualms about throwing the ball to even anywhere in the vicinity of Jamar Chase, because he's confident that Chase will make the play, whether he's wide open or double covered. So, you put that together with that defense. I honestly don't think I'm going to score him this week, and maybe a little bit only because, road teams always make, when I take a road team, I always score them a little bit, but I'm sorry. With what the Jets don't have, the talent gap, as you said,
it's immense.
Yeah, it's immense.
It's definitely immense. Although another thing I should have mentioned is the fact that there was all these rumors that Jamar Chase was dropping the ball in preseason.
Well, he was, but he righted the ship.
He fixed that very quickly, and that showed by the preseason.
He is now who we expected him to be.
And you're right. This is one of the best cases of, if you have a star quarterback, get his college receiver if you have to. And that's a very simple thing. All right, moving on to the Giants. On account of their amazing defense coming back to life, Daniel Jones continuing his good play in 2021, and the hiring of the same ghost that Sam Darnold apparently saw in MetLife Stadium last year as a New York Jet, the Giants won 25-3, scoring 25 unanswered to go to 2-5. Next up, and we'll talk about this too, the 3-4 defending AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, the 3-4 defending AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs. Jay, very good performance against Carolina. What needs to continue en route to Arrowhead?
I mean, honestly, what needs to continue is Daniel Jones getting back on track. I mean, after the Giants' last game, where the Rams opened up a huge can of whoop ass on a very undermanned Giants team, all these so-called experts were ready to shout from the rooftops that the Daniel Jones that we saw in that game was the real Daniel Jones. Oh, he's back again, making bad throws, bad decision. He turned the ball over 4 times. And then it was only a matter of time before that version came back around. Well, 1 week later, where are all the naysayers now? Huh? Despite the absence of running back Saquon Barkley, wide receivers Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, and Sterling Shepard, not to mention left tackle Andrew Thomas, Jones still managed to go 23 of 33. That's a shade under 70% completion, 203 yards, 1 TD, no scores, a 95.9 passer rating, had 6 carries for 5 yards, not counting a pair of kneel downs, and even made a ridiculous one-handed catch of a throw from wide receiver Dante Pettis off some trickeration that went for 16.
What an athlete!
The guy was QB1, he was RB1, and he was wide receiver 1 in that game. So he was efficient, he was mistake-free, he made plays, and he led the Giants to a win they needed despite a patchwork offensive line and a B-list cast of playmakers. Got to give some credit to offensive coordinator Jason Garrett for devising a scheme that called for a big dose of rollouts to move Jones's launch point, get him to release quicker, offset an aggressive Carolina pass rush from being able to get a straight line to him, and to give him the option to run when he got outside the pocket. The combination of said patchwork offensive line and said B-list playmakers in this pass rush made a downfield passing attack impossible. So the Giants repeatedly attacked the Panthers with slants and were able to pick up yardage with quick throws. It's not the type of offensive scheme we've come to expect this season, but Garrett called it effectively and Jones executed effectively, and it led to a win. Look, the Giants did short circuit, some drives with some self-inflicted wounds, 8 penalties for 60 yards, many of them stalling drives, something they can ill afford Monday night against the Chiefs. But overall, Jones did what he's done all season prior to the Rams loss. He made good decisions. He got the ball to his playmakers, made plays of his own, and put the offense in position to score. So let's give the kid a break about the Rams games, all right? Even Patrick Mahomes has had some rough outings this season.
We'll talk about that. I honestly, Daniel Jones has been a lot better than Patrick Mahomes in situations this season. And I will say this, Daniel Jones just sat out that Rams game. The narrative would have been completely different. When you have a concussion, when you get hit like that, I don't know how you can come back and play the next week. And again, as we mentioned, we talked about Jay, and I think we may have all talked about this. The fact that he was in that whole entire game is just, I think, a pure negligence.
Yeah, that was criminal
there by Joe Judge, and that could have hurt him even more. Sometimes I think this is also just, it's lost on the leap that Daniel Jones has made from last year to this year. I think all of the injuries have helped his cause into seeing that he's going to be the QB for the Giants, at least for a few more years. Anthony, there were some negatives in that game, especially early on in that game. It looked very ugly. It was 5-3 for God knows how long of a time. I almost thought Aaron Judge was about to hit a home run to get them up 6-5 at one point in that game. What do you take away that needs to stop in week 8?
Considering the opponent is Kansas City this week, it's got to be the best on offense. I mean, we saw it early in the game. They have 4 cracks at the goal for the 1-yard line and can't get in. Devontae, this is what Saquon Barkley is sorely missed, because Devontae Booker, he doesn't have much of a offensive line to run behind, but even when he doesn't really have the explosiveness or the athleticism that Saquon Barkley possesses, because it clearly showed when the Giants was stuffed on the 1-yard line. And couldn't get away with points. But it's been a problem too. We remember at the Dallas game, it took them a very long time to get into the end zone. Not to mention, it was where Daniel Jones got his concussion on a rollout play, and he took a hit. Some of the play calling down inside the 20 by Jason Garrett has been atrocious all season long. We've seen that the Giants are the worst red zone offense in the NFL. Last year, when they were almost dead last in that same category, just 46%. As the drives result of the touchdowns. This year it's 45%, so it's actually gotten worse. And now you got Kansas City Chiefs defense that is just been so charitable this season as far as giving up yards and points. And it's not the fact that they've given up a lot of yards. They're giving up close to over 400 a game. It's the fact they give up a lot of big plays. I mean, you talking about Patrick Mahomes turning the ball over, but this Chiefs defense is bad. Have been bad all season long. And this, if Jason Garrett is going to ever open up this playbook, besides the trick play and almost getting Daniel Jones killed yet again, because that pass led to him being, showing his athleticism, but then taking a hit up high yet again. But if this is going to open up the offense, this is the perfect week to do it. When you have to score touchdowns, you don't have to come away with points and not just field goals. And you got a defense that is really, really struggling to stop anybody right now. I mean, we saw the butt whipping Tennessee put on them just a few days ago. I mean, Jason Garrett play calling up until that trick play was being highly criticized on social media for a number of reasons. But, obviously the Giants and Daniel Jones playing a lot better, and the second half kind of negated and offset everything. But the rest on offense for the Giants has really been bad. And some of it has to do with not having enough weapons. Obviously, Tony going down with the injury. Galladay was supposed to be the red zone guy at the division. He's been unavailable. Shepard as well has been in and out. So when you get inside the 20, it's obviously those key weapons with the Giants are missing is where it kind of stands out the most because Daniel Jones and some of the receivers he has haven't been on the same page. It shows that they really haven't had enough reps together, and Booker just doesn't have. He's not Saquon Barkley, you know, and the defenses obviously know that. So Garrett's gonna have to be have to think a little more outside the box a little bit. Maybe try to use more play action inside the red zone. Maybe run a quarterback draw that won't result in Daniel Jones taking another hit that will result in another concussion. I mean, it's tough, but it's tough when you don't have the weapons to kind of do the play calling. But at the same time, Jason Garrett's got to be a little more matched up than what we saw against Carolina. I mean, three runs inside the 1 yard line and you can't get in. Pretty much shows you that you're gonna have to think a little harder outside the box if you're gonna score some points.
Kansas City's defense, by the way, totally agree. It's going to be interesting, though, because this is one of the first weeks out there that all of the attention on this game nationally, because it is a nationally televised game on Monday night, is going to be on the Chiefs, because a lot of the times when you see a New York team, they always will get the attention, especially one that's been struggling. But the Kansas City Chiefs, who are me and Jay's Super Bowl pick for the AFC, which doesn't really look too good. So
plenty of football left to be played.
There is plenty of football left, but I'm going to tell you what's big problem. Obviously, the defense has been a problem for years. I mean, they are putrid this year in every simple way. If you even in the games that they've won, the Cleveland game in the beginning of the season, the Washington game, and the Philadelphia game, each of the first halves, they looked like their opponents looked like they could move down the field at any point at any time. Adjustments have worked for Steve Spagnuolo, but Buffalo is able to just really mix up their plays and confuse Kansas City's defense in that game. The Chargers, Justin Herbert was able to pick apart that team in every sense of the word in that game. You had just look back in the last week, even with Derrick Henry. The defense was just so focused on Derrick Henry, they forgot that Ryan Tannehill has all pro wide receivers to throw to, like A.J. Brown. And again, they've been lost defensively at times this year, but Patrick Mahomes had to be able to take them back and put them back in games. It seems like Patrick Mahomes could be down double digits, and that would look like it was a tie game to most quarterbacks. Now it's a little bit different because, number one, if you watch the Super Bowl, I have never seen a Super Bowl that has opened up Pandora's box to everything else. You watch the Super Bowl, what the Bucs did to the Kansas City Chiefs was basically take away the deep ball, make sure Kelsey doesn't get 30-yard plays, make sure Tyreek Hill doesn't get 30-yard plays, and allow Kansas City to kind of sort of dink and duck their way down the field. For Kansas City, force them to basically dink and dunk their way down the field.
Yeah.
Works for some teams, doesn't work for an impatient team like the Kansas City Chiefs because they don't know how to kind of dink and dunk their way down the field. They always will be almost your Phoenix Suns 6 seconds or less type offense. However, again, also no running game. I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire got injured earlier this season and may not be back for a while. And the running game is average at best. Tyreek Hill is not a possession wide receiver, so he's been taken out a little bit. Even Travis Kelce has had a bad year. But the ultimate problem has been Patrick Mahomes. Some of the passes he has thrown this year, I don't know if he seems bored out there and wants to be able to make that no-look pass that you can do as a quarterback at all times, especially in today's NFL, but he has the most interceptions in the NFL this year in 9. He has thrown a pick in 6 straight games. And some of those picks, if you watch the Washington game where they won, where he literally just threw the ball up for grabs, have been horrible. Patrick Mahomes is probably hitting right. It's like if you're a novelist and you hit writer's block. This is the first writer's block that Patrick Mahomes has hit in his entire career. There are teams that now know what the Kansas City Chiefs do, and are kind of figuring out what the Kansas City Chiefs do. One more analogy I want to make. It's kind of like when the St. Louis Rams had their 3-year run from 1999, winning Super Bowl 34 to when they lost to the Patriots in Super Bowl 36, and we never really heard anything from the Warner era Rams again. That's what this is, it seems like, for the Chiefs. I have hope that they can turn this around because they have the most gifted quarterback in the National Football League under center. But if he continues throwing the way he has, I don't know about that. I think the NFC East has been a godsend to the Chiefs this year, because if you watch the second half of the game they had against the Philadelphia Eagles, if you watch the second half of the game they had against the Washington Football Team, they just dissected those teams from start to finish. And again, they have no talent to keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs. Any team that has talent right now to keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs on the offensive side can give them a run. And let's see what happens with the Giants on Monday night. I expect this. Anthony said it correct. This is going to be a shootout. But if it's who has the ball last, maybe the Giants have a shot in here. Spoiler alert, Kansas City is my suicide pick this week because I never trust the Giants to have 2 straight weeks of success.
Well, look, Rabbi, I understand, Patrick Mahomes has definitely not been Patrick Mahomes. But to me, part of the reason why he's in this position is that he's being forced more than usual to try and make plays, to make up for a fact that where in the past the Chiefs defense has been mediocre to slightly below mediocre, and that has been enough. They are absolutely woeful this year. Steve Spagnuolo's unit is in the bottom third of the NFL in every statistic you can think of. Least number of sacks, worst completion percentage against, worst passer rating against, most yards allowed on the ground through the air, in every way possible, in every statistical thing you can use to measure a defense. This is hands down the worst defense Spagnuolo has had in his time as defensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you don't think their inability to make stops, to get to a quarterback, to get teams off the field, to keep teams out of the end zone doesn't factor in what Patrick Mahomes has to do on a given week, I'm sorry. There is definitely a correlation there, and there is also causation there. Mahomes is trying to do way too much because his defense isn't doing anything at all.
I know that, but I also do think that there is a point of pressing and there's a point of really pressing. And Patrick Mahomes is way too talented to have more interceptions than Zach Wilson this year. He knows better, and I think that he has the ability to make better decisions. I'm not saying he is a terrible quarterback. I'm just saying that this is his first rough patch of his entire career. He is he is pressing because he's down a lot, but he's also pressing because he's trying to make throws that aren't there. And you saw it last week in the Titans game. A mountain can become a molehill, or a molehill can become a mountain in this case, in a very, very short period of time. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs will right it. I mean, me and your reputation is on the line, Jay, to make sure that they do. But
you don't have much of a reputation to begin with.
I don't have it yet. That is true.
My reputation, on the other hand.
But I'm very curious to see what Kansas City can do to fix this, and if they can make adjustments, because this is the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era that they're kind of forced here.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if, Patrick Graham and the Giants defense follow, what everybody else has been doing, which is going with that too high Brandon Staley, Vic Fangio, too high shell to, like you said, force the Chiefs to, dink and dunk down the field. And what that defense is hoping to do is get a quarterback to be impatient, to force a throw, to try and get a chunk play because he's frustrated that he can't do what he normally does. The way that's going to work, though, or should I say that coverage will not work, if the Giants can't get any pass rush, and they have struggled to get a pass rush this year. So we'll see how it goes.
And Jabril Peppers is out for the year now, safety-wise. So
Yep.
that's going to be a bad backfield as well to throw against. All right. Finally tonight, college football. The great game of Saturdays releases its first CFP poll this week, and the storylines are commenced. And hell, Alabama lost and looked a little bit mortal on occasion, so that's cause for celebration already, but we will not talk about that. As we head into, Jesus Christ, November, I want us to pick a team to look at for the second half of the season. Jay, your team kicks off in a little over an hour.
That would be these Michigan Wolverines, who are surprisingly 7-0 coming into their second, number 2 rivalry game. I have to say, as someone who follows this team, that I did not see this 7-0 start happening, and I definitely did not see it happening this way. Led by a dominant running game and a rotation at quarterback. I did not expect the 1-2 punch of Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins would combine to average over 190 yards per game, and the team would be averaging over 253. These two running backs each have 10 touchdowns on the ground. Corum is actually the Wolverines' leading receiver coming into this week with 18 catches. Cade McNamara is quarterback number 1, and he's been efficient most of the time, spectacular some of the time. He's made some medium to deep throws, and he's missed some medium to deep throws. He's completed 63% of his passes, though the Wolverines' reliance on the run game and the fact that QB2 J.J. McCarthy gets a few series each game, McNamara only has 146 passing attempts, and he's only averaging 7.6 yards per attempt. The lack of reliance on the passing game is kind of surprising for a Jim Harbaugh team, but so far it's working. He's tossed 5 scores. He has only 1 pick and has a 137.1 passer rating. McCarthy is the future. Guy's a freshman. And the glimpses he's shown as the change of pace quarterback has Big Blue fans salivating. He's as much runner as passer so far this season. He's got 10 carries for 53 yards and a score on the ground. He's 12 of 19 at 63.2%. For 212 yards. He's averaging 11.2 yards per attempt. So the Wolverines do tend to go downfield more when he is under center. He has two touchdowns and no interceptions through the air. His passer rating is a 191.6. Head coach Jim Harbaugh and offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis have made the 2 quarterback system work so far this season. Though having that 1-2 punch at running back does take a lot of pressure off whomever is taking the snaps. The defense has been solid. They're allowing 14.3 points per game, which is the number 2 scoring defense in the nation, averaging only 182 yards plus through the air and only 115 on the ground. Anytime a defense allows less than 300 total yards per game, less than 5 yards per play per game, and barely over 2 touchdowns per game, you've got a good chance to win every week. And so far, the Wolverines have, especially when you have bookend pass rushing terrors in Aiden Hutchinson and David Ayabu, each of whom has 5 sacks. This team has scored less than 30 points only once, and that was a 20-13 escape over Rutgers. And they beat a team I didn't expect them to, a convincing 38-17 win over Wisconsin. Nebraska gave them trouble, but the Wolverines pulled out a 32-29 win. There were some who thought last week's game against Northwestern could be a trap game with Michigan State coming up, but the Wolverines took care of business with a 33-7 win. They're in East Lansing for rivalry game number 2, and it's the first time since 1964 that both the Wolverines and the Spartans are ranked in the top 10. It's also the first time in the 114-year history of this rivalry that the teams are meeting with records of 7-0 or better. So to say that it's a statement game for both teams would not be an understatement. Rabbi asked me earlier this year who the Wolverines had to kill to get any respect, and I told him Ohio State, always Ohio State, but beating little brother will help.
Yeah, and this is just the Jim Harbaugh has had trouble with Michigan State when Michigan State wasn't good. So this is a huge game for Harbaugh. Again, different type of Michigan team that we've seen from previous years. Mm-hmm. Impressive. The Big Ten, the Michigan State, Ohio State combo are going to kill each other over the next few weeks. And then you have the Big Ten West, who I don't even want to talk about how bad the offenses are in that conference. I would be here for like 5 years ranting out. But Big Ten, I think, is the best conference right now in the country next to the SEC. And I still would put a good case for the Big Ten, still with 4 ranked teams in the top 10 right now. Each of those games are slugfests. Anthony, let's head out west.
Yeah, and my team to focus on is the Oregon Ducks. And let's be honest, they're the number 7 ranked team in the nation. And they're really, to use a Star Wars reference, a new hope, or the only hope for that matter, as far as the Pac-12, seeing a team get into the college football playoff. Look, it seemed like, back in week 2, when they went into Ohio State and won probably the biggest non-conference game in franchise history, it seemed like Oregon was going to be part of that college football playoff conversation pretty much the entire season. But since then, they have played down to opponents, and obviously they haven't looked too great. They struggled against Arizona. They actually lost to Stanford in a game that they blew the lead multiple times and squandered a 7.4 quarter lead. And then they needed a goal line stand to win another game against Cal. Last week against UCLA, they fell behind 14-0. And you start to wonder, was that a mirage that the team that went into Columbus and won a big road game disappeared? But then they showed up in the second half and scored touchdowns on back-to-back drives, and then 3 of the next 4 drives to win that game. But look, right now, it's going to be tough sledding to even get into the college football playoff for any Pac-12 team because the Big Ten is so good this year, and obviously the SEC being always in the center of the conversation. But then you look at the Ducks getting a couple of breaks. Penn State losing last week. It probably one of the ugliest 9 overtime games I've ever seen in my life. And then you got to think about how big that Michigan State game plays into what Oregon does. Mm-hmm. And Oregon playing Colorado later this afternoon, it's all about window dressing now. Like, they can't just win. They have to start putting together some really convincing victories and win in some dominant fashion. I mean, right now, you look at the quarterback situation, Anthony Brown's been good and bad at some moments. Like, he played well in the second half, and then last week threw a couple of bad interceptions that didn't help matters as far as putting that game away. Look, the Ducks, they have about 100 uniform schemes right now. We get that. I mean, they went from eggshell white to now like a mustard yellow this and black color scheme this week. And granted, it's great and all, but they need the same consistency they've been putting in their uniform combinations this season. They need to put into their performances on the field. Like, because right now, it's about impressing the College Football Playoff Committee, which we all know have put out criteria and moved the goalposts every once around, depending on what team presents an argument for itself. Oregon needs to start putting together some convincing wins, and they're going to have to win out. They're going to have to win out, including winning the Pac-12 championship, and they have to put up some style points. I mean, that's pretty much what it is, because it was going to be tough enough for a Pac-12 team to get in anyway, but when you're playing down to opponents the way the Oregon Ducks have done this season, between the UCLA game last week and that week 2 game against Ohio State, I mean, it's pretty obvious to overlook any team from the Pac-12. Like, okay, well, we still have the ACC. We still got teams in the Big Ten and the SEC that can send 2 into that college football playoff field. So they got their work cut out. But it does start with taking care of your opponent. A 2-5 Colorado team that has really struggled this season and can't stop anyone defensively. And you're going to have to really actually, like I said, win convincingly. And I call it the BCS treatment, where you start running up the scoreboard because you're trying to impress the College Football Committee, not necessarily trying to balance your opponent at the same time. But that's what Oregon has kind of put themselves in a position. They haven't really been able to capitalize on the eyeballs that they kind of drew to themselves when they won that week 2 game against Ohio State. They haven't been able to take advantage of it and build on that momentum.
Well, Anthony, here's the other thing the Oregon Ducks have going for them, and that is my 8-year-old niece, Harmony Eve Petrilli, daughter of our longtime friend and former host of the show, Nisa Petrilli. My niece, however she became to be a Ducks fan, is irrelevant. I was at their house for that Oregon game against UCLA. We came back from the playground. Oregon was down 14-0. Harmony saw the score, rushed into her room, put on her favorite Oregon Ducks t-shirt, and her brother brought out all their stuffed ducks. And from that point on, Oregon scored 14 unanswered to tie the game and went on to win. So you cannot disabuse my niece of the notion that she is the magic charm for Oregon. So whether they know it or not, they got that going for them.
World's biggest super fan. Here's some interest here. So I'm curious, actually. First of all, ACC. You could probably kill them from the college football playoff. The only team that's undefeated right there is Wake Forest, and that's not happening. But one thing and I think this is actually my biggest question right now, what they're going to do with the CFP. Oregon's win over Ohio State was very impressive. I'm curious if Oregon gets ranked higher than Ohio State. Ohio State, since that game, has looked like a top 5 team in the country, and Oregon has had some bad games. I think Oregon can play the war of attrition and maybe get in as a 4 seed if everybody loses, because there's going to be teams that lose ahead of them. If Alabama loses another game, they might be in they might have to go out of the conversation because of that one loss. But I'm very, very curious of how that will affect at least the first CFP standings and how it will affect the last CFP standings.
I'll tell you this, that the Ducks are going to be rooting very hard for this team on the last Saturday of the regular season, because if Michigan
absolutely
Ohio State, then that and Oregon wins out. If that doesn't cement them as one of the 4, I don't know what else the Pac-12.
But Jay, maybe not, because then you would have if that situation, you might have an undefeated Michigan team against an undefeated or against a 1-loss Oregon team. And at that point, there's no point of comparison. Remember, Oregon won at Ohio State. That needs to be looked at the best. They've won at Ohio State.
That's the thing. That's why I'm saying is that if Oregon wins out and wins the Pac-12, and Michigan knocks off Ohio State, if that doesn't catapult the Ducks into the top 4, I don't know what else a Pac-12 champ can do.
Yeah, the only problem is it might put Michigan also in the top 4 at their expense. And again, if there's a team that really needs style points, it's Cincinnati, but they're not the team I'm going to talk about, because college football begins and ends this year with the Georgia Bulldogs. Jay was talking about how good Michigan's defense is. This is how good Georgia's defense is. 6.6 points allowed per game. That is with an SEC schedule, and even though Clemson's not great this year, with the beginning game against Clemson, which had won 10-7, they have allowed 5 touchdowns this year. We are about to be in November, and they have allowed 5 touchdowns this year. That 6.6 points per game, by the way, is the best in the nation by more than a touchdown. Georgia is one of the best defensive teams we have seen in college football in a long time. Yeah. And it starts with Jordan Davis, who he only has 18 tackles, 3 for loss, and 5 QB hurries. But Davis is essentially the game stopper in all of college football. He forces offenses to game plan around him. And then everybody else in the Georgia defense, who has at least 3 first-rounders right now with Todd McShay's first-round draft, that happens. They get in there. They are just, you have Nakobe Dean, linebacker, Adam Anderson, tackle Devontae Wyatt, safety Lewis Sine. They are all first-round consideration defensive players. This is one of the best defenses that we have seen in a long time. Now, it might have helped that Jordan Davis got to come back last year after getting injured against Florida in that world's largest cocktail party game. But this is a Georgia Bulldogs defense that played a hot team in Arkansas, destroyed them, played an undefeated team going in there in Kentucky, and they disappointed themselves and let up a grand total of 2 touchdowns in that game. They were very disappointed with themselves at the end. This is the 2021 Bulldogs are shaping up to be Kirby Smart, head coach's best defense since the Crimson Tide of 2011 allowed a meager 8.2 points per game en route to the national championship. It actually shut out LSU 21-0 in the title game. And guess who the defensive coordinator for Alabama was at that time? You guessed it, Kirby Smart.
Yep.
So I know Georgia has had the history of big game mishaps, see Super Bowl 51, see the Atlanta Braves losing a 3-1 NLCS game series game last year, see them losing to Alabama in the Georgia Dome in the national championship in 2018, but the season ends and begins and ends right now with the Georgia Bulldogs. They are by far the best team in college football. And again, they've done it with two quarterbacks. Stetson Bennett has been solid. He's given them 25 points per game, but he's pretty much the Trent Dilfer of this Georgia Bulldogs team. He is the game manager. JT Daniels is about ready to come back into that starting position. But it really doesn't matter who the quarterback of this team is right now. They have a good enough offense to get them the points that they need. And you only need 20 and you're pretty much set. This is one of the best defenses I've ever seen in college football. And if this continues, I don't even know if Georgia can Georgia their way to losing a national title game.
Look, I would say this
here's the scary thought, Rabbi, is we were in a season in college football where Nick Saban has lost to an assistant for the first time ever. And you have a potential situation where, as good as this Georgia team has been, and look, I think they can get through the SEC schedule with things exactly as they are now. But if they wind up playing Alabama in the SEC title game, I think Kirby Smart would rather have a quarterback back there who can actually make plays in JT Daniels than a guy who just can really only, his best quality is his ability to be efficient and not make mistakes, meaning Bennett's a play not to lose quarterback. Daniels is a play to win quarterback. And I think they may need that little bit of extra something that a guy like Daniels can bring if they're going to get past not only Alabama in a potential SEC title game, but to win the national championship going through 2 rounds of the CFP.
Agreed. And I'm sorry, I'll let you finish off in a second. That was the situation with their team that made the title game in 2018. They had some quarterbacks not to lose. I don't know what Daniels can be for that team, especially with the injuries. So he might be more limited. And again, he's been very injury prone this season. So maybe Bennett is going to have to warm himself up to the position of trying to make a few more plays. But right now, you don't know what he can do because he hasn't had to do anything.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I say this as an offensive player. There's nothing scarier than a defense is not just good, but they enjoy doing what they're doing, and they're disappointed when they give up points. I mean, look, we see this in the NFL. I bring up the Baltimore Ravens in 2000 as a prime example. When you go up against a defense, when you go up against a defense that enjoys beating the crap out of you, and in the process challenges themselves to not give up points, that's a scary combination when you're on the offensive side of the football, and you realize that, as the rabbi puts on his what looks like a Will Ferrell wig, but it's a scary thing. And watching this Georgia defense give up just 6 points a game, and the fact that they're just so good that they literally will shut down an offensive team, that is, look, Georgia may not need a quarterback at this point to do anything. We've seen teams win championships without the offensive side doing anything, okay? We saw that with the Ravens, okay? They want to see what with Trent Dilfer of all quarterbacks. But this Georgia defensive team just been so good and scary that you wonder. The scary thing is if they do have a letdown, when will it happen? Will it happen late in the year? And will it happen in the SEC championship game? Will it happen in the college football playoff?
Right.
We don't know. But this defense have clearly done not just enough to be scary good. It's a fact that I think they know in their own locker room that their offense can only do so much. That, you know what? We're going to go out. We're going to pitch a shutout because we're that good. Not because we need to, because we enjoy the opportunity to embarrass an offensive team and shut them down and break their will in the process. And like I say, on the offensive player and that happens, it's demoralizing. On
Yep.
the defensive side, it's just having fun. It's a normal Saturday afternoon on the field. So like I said, this defense has just been really good, and we're just looking to see will they have a letdown, and if so, when will it happen, and will it be the most opportune time for the Georgia Bulldogs?
I want to say
Rabbi,
this one
take
thing
us home.
before, I want to say this one thing before we finish off, and I will. This is to Jay's point about quarterbacks. You can't win with the defense all the time, especially in today's college football. The last 7 national championship runner-ups average 25 points per game. So I know it's hard to actually take that seriously wearing this wig, but you might need a little bit of offense going forward. We'll see what happens. All right. Again, if you want candy, just let me know and give.
Yeah, because we're gonna take candy from a guy with a weird wig. Yeah,
it's a fucking Halloween costume, or at least it was the Halloween costume I had last year. Couldn't find my eye patch in time. Anyway, for Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, this bag of Kit Kats right here, the cheating Houston Astros. I will always say that. The people who don't like voting laws in Atlanta, the pathetic Jets, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Shane Falco, who might be actually quarterbacking. Shane Falco, who actually might be quarterbacking the Jets next week. The people of Fox who have to actually see the Jets on national television next week. We're so sorry about that. The Giants, Daniel Jones, Patrick Mahomes, anybody in Arrowhead who will be sober on Monday Night Football. I'm going to guess not really too many people. Alabama, Jimbo Fisher, who I can't believe became the first actual person to beat Nick Saban, and Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin always needs to be immortalized on every show. I wish he was the first Alabama assistant to beat Nick Saban. For all of those people, This is on the Sports Lines. Please join us on all our social medias. You can find this show or many of the other ones that you may have missed at youtube.com/onthesportslines. Find us live every single week on facebook.com/onthesportslines. And Jay?
At Twitter at ONTH Sportslines, where you will find a link to this show and other interesting sports-related tidbits that you should pay attention to because we think they're interesting.
I need to take this wig off anyway.
Yes, you do.
We have a bunch of stuff to go through next week on Wednesday. Please join us then for On the Sports Lines. Good afternoon and good nights.
Good
afternoon. Happy Halloween, everyone.